All right, so today we are looking at how to write inequalities, linear inequalities, when given a graph. Okay, so that's what we're looking at doing. That's what's going to go on here. So your notes are in a foldable. So you can see up here, I've got like the front part of your foldable. What you want to do is basically take this part and fold it over to the other side hamburger style. Okay, so that's how it'll be. You do not have to fold it, but if you wanted to fold it and make it cool, and then later on where those dotted lines are, you can cut to make like a little foldable thing where you can fold and look at examples and stuff like that. All right, I am not going to get caught up in that, okay? So, all right, so I want to go through these first on the front and give you some information about them. Just to help you out. So when you go to writing an equation with an equal sign, this is review. So I'm going to write review because this is something that we've already done. We already looked at this. We already did this. Okay, all that jazz. So we were good with all that. All right, now, these next ones are when you write inequalities, there are some things that stand out and some things that you need to know. For example, when you have an inequality, and you're writing an inequality, a linear inequality, and it's got this inequality, the less than or equal to inequality, there's some things you have to know. When you look at a graph that has this, well, first thing you're going to know is that it would be a solid line. And the second thing you're going to have to know is that it would be shaded below. Those are characteristics you're going to have to be able to look at a graph and pull out, okay? So, for the next inequality, here it's greater than or equal to. Well, again, this one is going to be a solid line. However, where's it would be shaded on this one? Above. Perfect. So being able to see these things and pull them out. The next inequality is simply a less than. Okay, well, there's no line underneath, so that would mean it is a dashed line. And it is not facing the front, so this is one that would be shaded below. And then the last inequality that is greater than, that is another one that would be a dashed line, but this time it would be shaded above. Okay, so those are things that can help and allow you to do that. Now what we are going to do is flip over here to this other side and go through it real quick and allow you to see some of the stuff and talk about how you would solve those problems. Okay. All right, so we are going to start with number 1 and number 2. The reason that we are starting with them is because these are reviews on how you have to write equations. Here's the other part you need to know. When you write an equation, you always want to write it in slope-intercept form. Perfect, you beat me to it. Slope-intercept form, which is going to be y, your inequality, mx plus b. So, to be able to write that then, when you go here and look, you need to know your b value and you need to know your m value. Those are the things you need to know. So on number 1 and number 2, these are equations. We've already done that this semester, right? Okay? So what you have to remember here is when you go to write it from looking at this, your b value is where it crosses the y-axis. So on number 1, that's going to be at this dot that I just colored blue. What is that number value where it crosses at? You're looking at the y-axis. -1. So your b value then is -1. When you go to find your slope, which is your m value, you've got to remember that it is always rise over run. So in this case, we are using the blue dot. We just need to find another dot. And then we want to count between them. So remember, I always start at the bottom and I'd count up 1, 2, 3. So that number is 3, but since I went up, it's in the positive direction. And then from there, I got to count over to the right. 1, 2. So that is 2, but since I went in the right, that is also the positive direction. So rise over run would be 3 over 2. Well, now since this is an equation, remember equation means equal sign, We just take y equals mx plus b, and we plug in our b value and our m value. So we would get y is equal to 3 over 2x minus 1. And we just wrote that equation. Questions? Feeling good? All right. What we're going to do is we are going to work the odd ones, and then I'm going to give you some time to work the even ones, okay? And we'll go together. All right, so let's look at number 3 here, okay? Number 3, it says write an inequality for the graph shown. So since it is an inequality, we know that we're not going to use an equal sign. We've got to use one of our inequalities, right? Okay, here's what I do first. I look at what the graph tells me, okay? So the first thing I check, is my line solid or is it dashed? It is a solid line. The next thing I look at, is it shaded above or below? Below. Here is what I have to do next. I know that I've got to choose my inequality based on that. Well, from this information given here, I know that I'm going to need a line underneath my inequality because it's a solid line. Are y'all with me? But then, to make it shade below, do I want it facing the front or do I want it facing everything else? Everything else. You are correct. So the only inequality that would make this graph true is the one that is less than or equal to. Okay? Now, after I find that, to find the m and the b value, I'm going to do the same thing that I just did above on that example. You with me? So I'm going to come down here and look. Do I see the b value where it crosses the y-axis? Hopefully you say, yeah, I see the b value. What number is it at? -2. So your b value is -2. Then I've got to find my slope, which is my m value. Okay? Well, I just choose another point, and then I count them. Remember, I always start at the lowest point. So I'm going to start at the red dot. If I go up 1, that's 1 in the positive direction. So that's a plus. But then I've got to count over 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I counted over 4 units, but I went to the left. Was the left the positive direction or the negative direction? Negative. So my slope is rise over run, +1 over -4. So now we do the same thing that we did before. We know that we're going to use the y by itself. Did we figure out what our inequality was? Yeah, it was less than or equal to. Okay, and then you just plug in. Your m value is -1 over 4. That goes with your x. Your b value was -2. And that is my inequality for the graph given. Questions? Huh? Okay. All right. Well, let's keep moving on. Okay. I think y'all are starting to see this process. Okay. Now, notice as we're doing this, I'm working an example of each one on the front, right? And then I'm going to let y'all try some. Okay. Number 5 is write an inequality for the graph shown. Okay. Well, what do you want to do here? Okay. As you look, all right, first thing I got to check, is my line solid or is it dashed? It is solid. Second thing is, where is it shaded? It is shaded above. So we know from that our inequality, it's got to have the line underneath. To shade above, you face forward. So the inequality here is going to be greater than or equal to. The next thing you got to do is go through and find your stuff. Where's your b value? where it crosses the y-axis, which is -5. Then you've got to find your slope. Well, you just choose another dot on there that intersects perfectly, and then you got to count. So here, if I start at the blue, I go up 2. So that's 2 in the positive direction. And then I count to the right, 1, 2, 3. I go to the right, that is also the positive direction. So your rise over run would be 2/3. Then it's plugging it in. You've got y. You already found your inequality. 2/3 x minus 5. Any questions? All right, let's look at number 7. We're keeping going. So this is another one that's going to be a little different. We're trying to make sure we get the process down. First thing we got to check, is it solid or is it dashed? It is a dashed line. Are we shaded above or below? Below. Okay, well what we know here is we are not going to have the line underneath our inequality. So then we just got to decide which direction does it have to face to shade below? Everything else, so that means it is going to be the less than. Next step is just picking out your key information. Your B value is 1. Your slope, you got to find a second point and count. Well, I'm just going to choose this point down here. My rise over my run. So I go up 1, 2, 3. So that's 3 in the positive direction. But then I count 1, 2 to the left. If I go to the left, that is negative. So it's +3 over -2. That is all the information I need to write the equation. Y is by itself. I've got a less than sign. -3 over 2x, because that was your m value, plus 1, because 1 was your b value. And that has created my inequality. How are we feeling? Good? All right. We are going to do one more. Okay? With this next one, it is write the inequality again for the graph. We've got to pick out key pieces of information. Well, is it a dashed or a solid line? It is a dashed line. Is it going to be shaded above or below? Above. So we've got to use that information to come up with our inequality. Right? So, what is going to happen? Well, it's dashed, so do we need a line underneath? No. To shade above, it's got to face the front, which is where the y is. So that symbol is called greater than. Let's pick out our key pieces of information. B is going to equal what? -2. There are lots of m values to choose from. Okay? I'm going to choose one right here and show you something that can happen. Say I chose that red dot to be my one that I count to. Y'all with me? And I'm just showing you this because sometimes you might have to do this. So if you start at the blue, you count up 1, 2, 3. So you went up 3 in the positive direction. Then you count over 1, 2, and 3. You go to the right, it is still positive. So watch this. What is your slope? 3 over 3. Do I want to leave my answer like that? What is 3 divided by 3? 1. I'm showing you this because sometimes you might have to reduce it. Okay? You might have to reduce if you choose one that are a little bit spread out. That's not the end of the world. It's just something you got to look for. So then it's all about writing your inequality. You've got y, all right, is greater than 3 over 3 here ends up being 1x and then -2. Now, I want to show you one thing. This answer is right. But if it was a multiple choice test, guess what? You might not see it written like this. Here's why. That 1 in front of the x doesn't have to be there, right? Because if nothing's there, we think it's a 1. You could see it written like this. Y is greater than x minus 2. That is the exact same answer, okay? Doesn't really change anything. It keeps you going like that. All right? Questions?
So if they're if you're dividing by the same number, is it gonna? You have to do that?
Yeah, you got to reduce it. Yep. All right. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you, let's say I give you about 10 minutes. Okay? 10 minutes to do the even numbers. As you're working on those, I'm going to go ahead and pass out your extra work, your practice work on it. And then we will go from there, okay? But I want y'all to do that. And then I will show you the answers to this. I'm not going to work them out live, but I'll show you the answers and we can go over them if you got any questions, all right? Ready, set, go. Okay, so there was your 10 minutes to kind of look at this and figure some of it out. So, here are your answers, okay? So number 2 up top, remember they're kind of your notes, so there's one example of each. So look at them. So up top, number 2, your answer should have been y is equal to negative 2x plus 3. Number 4, your answer should have been y is less than or equal to 3x plus 3. Number 6, y is greater than or equal to negative 5 over 2x plus 3. Number 8, you should have had y is less than 2x plus 0. Or know that you don't have to have the plus 0. You could have had just y is less than 2x. All right, and then the last one is y is greater than negative 2 over 5x plus 4. Okay. Looking at those, do we have any questions on any of them? Good. Okay, so then what I want you to do for the rest of this class time is go ahead and continue working on that practice sheet. All right, I will take questions at the beginning of class tomorrow on that, and then Thursday we will do something similar, looking at something like this to make sure that you're good and ready to go. Okay? Ready, set, go.